Okay, I got some messages on Instagram asking about what my process is like for inking and like how I do my lines and stuff. I don't think that I'm like an expert or anything in inking. Like obviously there's so many people who are way better than me. Like I still feel like a noob when it comes to that. But I wanted to make this video to just share my thoughts about inking, how you can ink more cleanly, more efficiently, to share my approach of improving the ink in your drawings. And I think I distilled it down into like 5 main things that you want to think about when it comes to inking, like the 5 main things to consider. So the first thing to start off with is the tools that you're going to use. So there's so many different inking tools you can use. Me personally, I like to just use fine liners of different sizes. So right here you can see I have a 0.1. I don't know if you can see it. Damn, it's really not okay. Yeah, 0.1 millimeters, 0.3 millimeters, and 0.5 millimeters, or 0.05 millimeters. 0.3 I will use for like kind of bold outlines. 0.1 I would just use as like the normal pen, and then like 0.05 I just bought it recently because I want to add more details to my inks. But there's so many different things you can use. You can use brush pens, which I use a little bit. I mostly use it for filling in black areas. But some people draw only with a brush pen, and I really want to do that more because it's super fun. Some people use fountain pens, dip pens, like G pens is like very common with manga artists. Some people just use like a Bic, like a ballpoint pen. And some people don't even use brush pens, they'll just use an actual brush, like just an ink brush. So it's all really up to personal preference, what you like. Everything's gonna have its own individual kind of style and look to it. But yeah, there's no correct tool to use. It's really just what works for you and like what you like. I really like using the G pen and like the dip pens, but it's such a hassle to set them up. Like I can't really find the correct ink, cleaning the nib and all this prep stuff. Like I just don't really like that. It gets in the way of the actual drawing for me. So that's why I just like the accessibility of using a fine liner. But for some people, they love all the prep and setup and stuff like that. So if that's just fun for you, that's what you should use, right? But after you've chosen what pen or, you know, what tool you want to use to ink with, the next thing is to learn how to actually control the tool properly. So when you just start out, the best way to do that, I think, is just the basic line exercises. In Peter Hand's book called The Dynamic Bible, he shows like a bunch of line exercises you can do to just get straight lines and or practice drawing straight lines and just learn how to control the pen, right? And with fine liners, that's all there really is to it because they have a set thickness, right? But with things like maybe a brush or a fountain pen or dip pen, you also want to practice controlling the thickness of your like lines, right? Because they have like varied line weights, and also just drawing in different directions. It's really just the mechanical side of moving your hand and, you know, creating marks with the tool. Yeah, that's really important so that you can actually draw what you want to draw, and it's going to reduce the amount of mistakes you make that you would have to clean up later. And talking about cleanup, I always just like to keep one of these. I barely use it just because whenever I make mistakes, this is Tipex. I mean, maybe in different countries it has a different name, but it's just the just correction fluid, I guess, or whiteout. That might be another name for it. But I barely use it because whenever I make mistakes in my inking, which you are gonna make mistakes when you ink, it's literally unavoidable. But whenever I make mistakes, I just, most of the time, unless it's like really big and like super glaring thing, I just leave it because it's not that deep to me. And that's another thing to speak on, is trying to be 100% clean. Now some people, that's their goal with inking, is they just want it to be as clean and crisp as possible, and that's a cool thing to do. Like if that's what you like, then I mean, go ahead, right? But I've come to realize that I don't think it's really important to be 100% clean with your lines. There's so many different styles of inking, and again, some of them are very clean and crisp. But your line work and your inking can have a lot of character if you can kind of see the shakiness of your hand. Not shaky, but like, there's a video I saw recently by this guy called Darth Luigi, I think his name is. Let me see. Yeah, Darth Luigi on YouTube. I'll link his page underneath. But he had a really good video where he talked about you don't really have to have 100% clean lines. Line confidence is way more important than line accuracy or how clean your lines are. And there's so many great different inking styles that exemplify this. Like they're not 100% crisp and clean, but they still feel really nice, even though you can see the small mistakes. And in a weird way, it makes the drawing feel like a drawing. Like obviously you know it's a drawing, but I don't really know how I'm trying to explain, but I don't know, it just looks cool to me personally. But you might not like that, so maybe you just want to focus on being as clean and crisp as possible, which again, that's completely fine as well. Okay, so now that we know what tools we're using, we know how to use them, and we've inked our drawing with confident lines, the drawing might still be kind of lacking in depth a little bit. If you want a really like graphical 2D style, then that might work, and that might just be where you want to leave it. But if not, the next thing that you want to think about is values. So even though when we use ink, we only really have two values to work with, it's just the black ink and then the white of the page. But despite that, we can still show a range of values with various different techniques. Obviously, the main technique that is known for values in ink is hatching, but you can show values through like your texture. And if you want to, you can just introduce a next value. Like you could just bring it, you could just use a marker or something, right? If you want to, like there's no rules. Alfonso Dunn on YouTube, like he's a really great inker, like, and he has a lot of exercises and stuff to show value with your hatching and stuff. And those hatching lines or contour lines or however you choose to show value with your inks, they can even give more depth through, you know, following the form and like contour lines, right? Like following the form of whatever object or part of the body or whatever it is you're drawing, right? So that opens up a whole new level of depth. But even if you don't want to do hatching, you can still give some depth to work even with just two values alone. There's a lot of artists who show shadows and stuff with just shapes of black, like just black shapes. I tried to practice doing that a little bit before, and I didn't do it enough to get good at it, but I just wanted to experiment and mess around with it. But a great example is somebody like Yoji Shinkawa, where he still has lines in his work, but you can see, you know, the bold graphical shapes. Or Tite Kubo, who drew Bleach, he does that a lot as well, where he has a lot of just areas of black. There's so many artists that I could go on for days listing different examples. I'd recommend you go and search yourself for artists that you like and then look at that. But that's something I'll get to in a second. But I think it's good to think of inking almost as like painting in a way. Because even though you don't have that same range of values that you do as when you're using paint, you can still represent light and shadow, right? But of course, these are just different styles and approaches to the same thing. And that takes me on to the last thing, is that because there's so many different approaches to inking, I think it's so important to just find artists you like and do a bunch of artist studies. Because everybody's going to do inking in a different way. Somebody like Kishimoto, for example, is very line heavy, right? Like he just does outlines for things. He doesn't do a lot of the shading and all that type of stuff. Whereas somebody like Takehiko Inoue is going to do a bunch of hatching and is pretty much painting when he inks, right? With a wide range of values through hatching. And one of those styles is not better than another. It's just a different approach, right, to inking. And then some of Mike Mignola's work will just have no lines at all, and it's just black and white shapes to represent the light and the shadow. So yeah, there's so many different approaches to inking and so many different people you can learn from. So I think it's so important with not just inking but any skill in drawing is to look at artists that you like and really just analyze what they're doing and try and put it into your own work. Because there's no correct answer on how to do things when we're drawing, right? It's just about what your personal taste is. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. It might have been 4 things instead of 5. Yeah, I don't really know, but I hope it was helpful anyway.